Today we've been rejoined by Trent Cooper, who was a former Fremantle AFLW coach, but now more importantly is head of the talent management of the WA AFLW crop each and every year. Trent, thanks for coming back on.
No worries, Cooper. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Now, we were just talking off camera. Obviously, this year's draft is not that far away, under about 3 weeks' time, and you're already pre-planning for next year's draft crop in WA already in a few weeks.
Yeah, it comes around quickly. Even at the combine, the day that we run the state combine, straight after that, we did the testing as well with the next crop coming through. So they've had a month off, and they'll start with us shortly. So looking forward to them coming in and getting ready for next season.
For sure. Now, in terms of the years gone by in the WA State Championship, obviously played 4 games this year instead of last year's 3. I remember last time, obviously, WA had basically played their first game when everyone was like 3 games in. Were you a bit more happy, Trent, of how the fixture went this year in terms of the management of games and everything like that?
Yeah, definitely. And the fixtures were a lot better this year. And that wasn't anyone's fault last year. That was just the way the seasons lined up and different things. So this year was a lot better, and our players could sort of show what they could do and not be tired at the end of their season. So I think that showed in our performances through the carnival as well.
For sure. And then obviously adding an extra game, another element to it as well. That's pretty good because considering, like you said last time, places are starting to find their groove towards the end, and adding more games, I suppose, makes that continuity a bit better for everyone, not just as a club or as a state, but everyone playing involved.
No, absolutely. And you see how some teams improve through the champs, like the Allies, even though we beat them in our last game, they were really good in that. It obviously takes them longer to gel because they haven't had a lot of continuity together, and the way they finished off the week after as well. So, 4 games is great. If someone gets injured, they might miss 1 or 2, but they can come back at different stages. And you can also play players in different positions to showcase what they can do. On an AFLW list, like Renee Morgan and Juliet Kelly, who played predominantly as midfield, but we wanted to show that they can also play other positions, and they played half back in their last game, which you can do when you've got more games.
Sure, and last year's crop obviously the ones that got drafted from last year, and there was a few that I thought were pretty stiff not to be a part of the group that did get picked up. Obviously, the main 2, people everyone talks about was Zippy Fish and Molly O'Hare, but obviously Lily Patterson was someone who kind of wasn't in the progress you mentioned last year, and found a way in the first round at Port Adelaide, which was great for her and the work that she put in and through that state champs. And then obviously Claudia Wright was another one who, as mentioned last time, had a broken leg, didn't play any games last year, and Taya Chambers obviously played at the Bombers as well. Must be pretty cool to see all those players get some opportunity, and all of them have played AFLW footy this year. Yeah,
it really is. It's one of the best part of the job is you can sit back and watch these players for 10 years. So all have done really well. Zippy obviously had a great season with Sydney and did what we expected her to do. Molly had a really solid first year, but we always knew that she's one with huge potential who's going to just keep getting better and better, and she hasn't reached anywhere near her ceiling yet. Lily took some opportunities, and she'll go better again for that. And Claudia, obviously difficult for her to break into such a strong side, but she looked really at home when she did play, and I know that Brisbane have been really happy with her progress. And I tell you, she may have played every game for the Bombers and showed what she can do. So I think it's great for future crops of WA girls coming through as well, if these girls do play well, because it shows that the WA girls, once they hit the ground in the AFLW, will be ready to go and can play good footy for whoever picks them up.
Sure, and obviously the rising star, obviously those awards, I think it's next week when all the medals and that are announced. Are you pretty pleased with how Zippy's positioned herself for a role like that? And I'm sure, no shock to everyone with the position she's in right now and had been in prior to the draft.
Yeah, no, she'd be pretty. I haven't followed her opposition close enough. I know Poppy Schultz had a good year. But, Zippy be pretty hard to beat. She made the All-Australian squad in her first season, played some really good footy. So, hopefully that, she can take out that Rising Star award.
For sure. Obviously, you've been in the business before in the AFLW, something we've been the head coach of Freo a little while back. When you judge these awards, Trent, and you look at, Rising Stars, and when you do all the shows, when you do your coaches' votes and everything like that, how much of an impact from players like Zippy, who played really well, don't get me wrong, but had like a lot of like kick-outs, playing like a loose type role, where if you want to compare her to someone like, say, Lucia Painter or Sophie McKay, who play different style roles up forward on the other side, having more of an impact play, how would you judge them when you do votings and everything like that?
It's really interesting. I think the coaches' votes, you really look into those. I used to take a lot of effort and pride in being able to vote on those. So you would really go into it really closely to see the role players were playing and the impact they were having on the game. So I think an award like a Rising Star will tend to be a bit more to the eye, which Zippy has obviously done. But when you do the coaches' votes week to week, it'll be a bit more on roll, and you'd always try to find a defensive player from one of the teams, whether it was a midfield defensive role or an actual defender, to get into those votes, because they do have really big impact on games. So it's a good question. I think the different awards will be done a little bit differently.
For sure, absolutely. I mean, personally, I had Painter and McHale. I couldn't split both of them. Zippy was right next up behind them. I just find it so hard, and it's a good problem to have too when you got so many players that stand out. It makes it harder to choose because probably pre-draft everyone would have said Ash Centra, and when she played, she was very good, but obviously missed half the season pretty much. So then you go to the other names, and it's really hard to choose, isn't it? And it's a good problem to have these days with the competition growing and growing.
No doubt. And I think Centra, she had a really interrupted pre-season, which has really sort of impacted her whole year because, she didn't have anywhere near the impact that was sort of expected. But that's to that, and I'd be pretty excited if I was a Collingwood supporter about what she can do next year on the back of a full pre-season.
For sure. And now this year's draft crop, obviously there's so many names that people will talk about. I'm sure you'll list off some as well. Carasadaro, Mia Russo, Evie Cowcher, which had big praise for last year, missed most of this year, Olivia Woolmerans, Olivia Crane. There's so many, and we'll go through all of them. How excited are you, Trent, with this year's WA draft crop?
Yeah, really excited. They've been a really good group to work with. A lot of them have been in our program for 3 years. To see their development and their characters really shone through as well. So, really looking forward to them finding homes on draft night and then seeing them perform on the big stage in the years to come.
Sure. How confident would you be of this year's draft crop, of how many you would think would be kind of locks to be drafted or should be locks to be drafted this year?
Yeah, I'd probably say we've got 7 or 8 locks, which is probably the most we've ever had. So that's, and it also depends on the number of draft numbers that are taken. So at this stage, clubs haven't finalised this, so we're not sure of how many. And that number of 7 or 8 could actually come down if there's not that many draft picks taken. But what I am confident with this group is with the character they've got. Those that don't get picked up this year, I expect them to be train-ons and then added to programs quite early. We've seen that happen a fair bit. And I think that this lot, if a club can get them as a train-on, they'll be really impressed with what they can do. And then when list spots do become available, they'll end up on a list. So I'm pretty confident that we'll have quite a few who, if they don't get picked up, will end up in that situation.
You mentioned there about trainers. I remember some names from last year's crop that we spoke about and just externally have been talked about, like Holly Britton. I know she had some trainers. I can't remember if it was Freo or West Coast, one of them. And then Tash Enwist went all the way to Victoria to play for Sandy for most of the season and went back to East Freo. And so players like that, do you feel like players like Holly and Tash in particular, and Noah McNaughton is another one, some names that could eventually find themselves in the position that you're just detailing there?
Yeah, definitely. And even playing and hopefully force their way into the AFLW state team as well. We'll have a fixture in South Australia next year. And we've quite a few players have done that last year. So the ones that were in that team who got opportunities, Poppy Stockwell, Maggie McLaughlin, who played really good footy for, and Court Lindgren was another one who I thought looked really good for West Coast before she got injured. So there's a few like that. And I think we've seen in the AFLW space, there's a lot more room for mature age players, if you like, even if they're 19, 20, 21, compared to opportunities for the boys.
For sure. Now let's backtrack to some of those names we were talking about for this year's draft. Carasadaro, Mia Russo, Olivia Woolmerans probably lead the pack, I feel like, for the WA crop. How strong do you reckon those three in particular could go in terms of a draft range, because they seem to be highly talked about, and when they're at WAFL level and the state team, they seem to always stand out every week?
Yes. So Karis is the one who I was probably most pleased for this year, because she'd had such a wretched run with injury and missed the previous two 18s campaigns because of injury. So we knew that she was a really good player. We sort of pushed hard to get her up for the National Academy, but we weren't successful in doing that just purely because enough people didn't know about her. So for her to actually come out and play as well as she did, win the MVP for WA was really good to see. And she had a really strong season for Swan Districts as well. So, I think that she would have put herself into first round contention for sure. Mia Russo, so she's always been on the radar. She was, I think, the national MVP as a 16-year-old for this group coming through, and she had another really solid year. So she's another one who I expect to be a first-round draft pick. Olivia Woolmerans, she's obviously a high-end talent, and she's that special type of athlete that there's not too many like her. I was going to say in the draft, but even in the AFLW, who can do what she does. So I expect her to go very high in the draft, and I still think Evie Cowcher is the best player in WA. I didn't see anyone from any state who's a better player than Evie this year. Granted, we didn't see Ava Usher, who's another one who I rate really highly, who we didn't see. But for mine, even though neither of them played, they're the best two players in this draft crop. So it'd be interesting to see where those two go and how high they go when it does come to draft night.
Sure, and Evie, we spoke about it last time about how highly she was last year and won bottom age MVPs and everything like that. And I mean, she reminds me of someone like Loz Young and Sandra, who have stood out years in advance, not just their draft year, their top age year, but bottom age years and even under 16s and stuff like that. They stand out from there and basically didn't play much this year at all, even at WA AFLW level. And I think it was last round 5, I think, something like that. I noticed there was a last game at that level or any level. And to still be talked about that highly, which shows how damn good she'll be.
Yeah, so she was our actual MVP for the 18s when she was 16. So she won the MVP 2 years in a row and would have been the third if she had happened to win it this year. And her injury, with the back injury, it was minor. And if it was a player who needed to play to be drafted, they would have played. But they could have played. But with Evie, she's obviously done a lot already, and she's going to get drafted. There was no point putting her at risk, and it was best for her long-term future and for whatever club that get her to not play this year and rest and rehabilitate that to be in the best possible nick. We would have loved to have her out there. I dare say a couple of results would have been different if we had her out there, but it was the best thing for her going forward. And Evie's been a real pro in the way she's attacked her rehab. And, she's going to be a great pickup for whoever gets her.
For sure. Then obviously some other names in the WA crop, anyone that you want to mention in particular, but obviously just list off some here. Alec Gilby, Renee Morgan, Alicia Blizzard, Illyria Froter, who's even playing some basketball for Perth Wildcats. And Lucy Greenwood, Juliet Kelly, as you mentioned before, and Maya Level Finn as well. Who's some other names that maybe might come as the Lily Pattersons of the world, who last year wasn't talked about until the very end? Who's some names that you might see float up as well that people should look out for?
Yeah, so just outside of that lot that you listed then?
Oh, them or any others, yeah.
Oh, them, okay, yeah. So outside of that lot, the other one who I rate highly with a huge ceiling is Sienna Timmermans, who's actually only played 1 year of footy. Is a really good athlete, and I think that she's going to develop into a really good player. It'd be interesting if any club has a go with her this year, or if she's another one who might have to come through that train-on phase, but she's one who I think's got great upside. But I think you nailed the rest of that list. Male Level Finn had a fantastic carnival, all Australian. She's been really deceptive athlete because she's so quick, so powerful, and her performance against the Allies on Magella Day, who I think is going to be a star. I thought Maya really put her name up there. Ella Gilby's another one who tested super, which would be no surprise, one of the best athletes we've ever had come through the program. And again, just learning her craft, but she's hard at the ball, hard at the body, and has got some game sense. And as her skills continue to improve, she's going to be a weapon going forward. Renee Kelly and Renee Morgan and Juliet Kelly, really similar in that they're both high footy IQ, unbelievable work rate, both of them. Every session, those two end up as our highest metres per minute athletes, and really team orientated, happy to play defensive roles where needed, can play through the midfield, but can also play back as well. So they're going to be an asset for whatever team gets them. Lucy Greenwood's one who I'm sure her as well, didn't have the year that we were hoping as far as performance goes. I think she's a really good player. She showed that last year. She towards the end of the season, she started to really get going. She had an unbelievably good pre-season. And then I'm not sure if the weight of expectations that she put on herself may have weighed her down a little bit. But her game against the Allies showed what she can do. And her last game of the season for East Perth in wet conditions, I thought was one of the best individual games all year from anyone. So she's definitely got the ability if sides can, if want to take her in the draft. And who else did you mention? Because I agree with them all.
Blizzard. Yeah, there's a lot. Alicia Blizzard.
Yeah, Alicia Blizzard. So she's another one of the best athletes in the program, and also provides unbelievable forward pressure. I know our backs hated training in those drills, whether it's backs versus forwards. They would panic getting the ball out because Alicia's forward pressure was so elite. That's something that she's worked on, and that skill alone can keep her relevant in any AFLW game she plays, because as you know, playing as a forward can be a tough time at different stages because the ball's not coming in nicely or it's crowded, but she keeps herself in the game with that. And she's a high-end talent. And the other one he mentioned was Alira Fotu, who still not sure if she's going to nominate for the draft. She's got a Lynx contract at the moment. She's not lost a footy. She still loves footy, but just sort of weighing up her professional options at the moment. And if it's not this year, then hopefully for the AFLW sake, they can still see her pulling a jumper at some stage because she's a really exciting prospect.
Sure, and Olivia Crane, obviously some of that, I think it was at Subiaco, had some knee injuries, I think a long-term injury as well, and I think she got back at the end of the tournament, didn't she, as well? And someone into her as well.
Yeah, she played all the games, so she's another one who will be in the mix as a first-round pick. So as a 16-year-old, she was outstanding, played really good footy. Then she did her ACL at the beginning of last season, so she missed all of her 17th year. And this year, she played some really good footy for Subi. She played solid footy for us, for WA, without being at her best. I think we played on a lot of shifting surfaces in the national championships, and someone who's 6'2" coming off a knee injury, probably just a little bit careful in that sense, but she ran a great 2K. She's at the moment, she's played mainly as a intercept defender, but I think she can develop into an inside mid. Unfortunately, her injuries meant that we couldn't put the time into developing her of that at the moment, but I think she has got all the capabilities of doing that. Another one with unbelievable footy IQ and a great leader who was voted in as one of our co-captains. So, yeah, she's another one that I expect to be pushing for that first-round draft spot.
For sure. And then you mentioned Ava Usher before. Obviously, this year's draft crop is full of academy players, just like it is in the men's draft, which starts in the next few days as well. It's like bid. Again, being a former coach, how would you go about with the draft and everything like that, and with all these academy players, especially Gold Coast and the women's side of things this year? They got probably 9 players will definitely be drafted, and they're not going to be able to have all the picks to be able to match it within 18 selections. How would you go about that as an opposition coach? So let's say in Fremantle's case or anyone's, how would you go about it? Would you try and potentially bid higher and knowing that a club may not, or Gold Coast won't be able to match them all?
Yeah, definitely. If I was Gold Coast, I'd be clearing the decks, trading out next year's picks and trying to get as many as possible, because I think even with last year's crop, if they can keep them together, a lot with your Havana Harris and those types, with this year's crop, there's a bit of short-term pain because your list is going to be sort of very young. We've seen that already with them, but I think that they could build something pretty special with that. And I think that's the way, you look at North Melbourne, sides who are trying to trade and do that to compete with North Melbourne are going to get left behind, because I don't think they'll catch them. And then a couple of years, the sides who are doing what Gold Coast and Western Bulldogs have done and West Coast Eagles, for instance, are going to go straight past those sides in the middle who are just trying to stay relevant and keep up with that. So, I'll be looking at drafting as many. Like you said, with Gold Coast, it'll be interesting to see what sort of draft hand they end up with after the trade period. But I'd be pretty keen to try to get someone out of Gold Coast if I could out of that academy, because there's a lot of top end talent, that's for sure.
Sure, and I've been told through my Gold Coast sources, let's just say that, Trent, that one of Rowbottom and Claudia Whitford, one of them has to go to be able to fit all these players in. And if I'm Gold Coast, if I would try and put it on the list hat, I would try at all costs to keep Charlie Rowbottom, because she's basically their future, but try to leave the last few years. So maybe Whitford, if they can get a first rounder for Claudia Whitford, who's had her injury troubles this year, and if it helps free in another player like, say, Georgia Davies, Ava Usher, Sunny Lapp, and everyone like that, it might have to bite the bullet there, as you said, short-term pain for long-term gain as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think Rowbottom, I agree. She's the one you'd love to keep, because she's just got that bigger, stronger body, a bit like Montana Hammer. You can build a team around. And if you've got a young team who's probably going to be light for a little while physically, have someone like Rowbottom who's a real bull. I love the way she plays. Yeah, I'd love to be keeping her on a long-term contract, that's for sure.
Sure, and you mentioned North Melbourne. I'm glad you brought that up. Who can beat North Melbourne at the moment, and how can you try and combat it? If you were still a head coach at another AFLW club, how would you go about combating them in terms from a list review and everything like that? Would you try and go target their players years in advance or months in advance? How would you go about trying to separate North Melbourne from everyone if you're an opposition coach?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, because if you're Brisbane or Melbourne or even Adelaide, who I think can still really challenge your Hawthorns and now Carlton, then you look at them and go, okay, how can we beat them in the next couple of years? And it's probably just getting that midfield depth through there and some real high-powered runners, because as good as North are, that probably is a way that you could possibly beat them. I know things have changed, but when I was at Freo, that's how sort of we got hold of them in a final, just with some real run and dare, because like Garner and Riddell, they're fantastic players, but you can possibly get them on the outside if you can break it through there. So if I'm with those lists, I'm looking at how you can do that. I think Hawthorn have actually the ones who've probably got that style that could possibly do that, but they just need a couple better players to go in that mix.
Yeah.
If I'm anyone else, I'm looking at it and going, we actually can't beat them for 2 or 3 years. So let's go younger and let's sort of get them as North Melbourne coming off, because hopefully for the competition's sake, they'll struggle to keep the list together. There'll be some really good offers come for their, maybe not their absolute stars, but their sort of second stringers who will be stars elsewhere. And if they can sort of break them apart in a couple, 2 or 3 years, they'll be coming back to the pack, and that's when you want a younger side coming through who can challenge them rather than just trying to stay close to them and not actually getting anywhere.
For sure. I mean, Croc's done an amazing job there at North, to retain all these players and also bring in players like they've brought in Libby Birch a year or so ago as well, on top of all the experience they already had, and she's done well there. But then you got her and Emma Carney, Kate Sheila towards the very end of their career, may even be last year, this year. Maybe that you mentioned the players below those high-profile ones, like the Mia Kings, Ruby Trapose, Amy Smith, Tess Craven, those types. If you could probably take some of those out of North in the next year or two, that might hurt them in a few years' time, considering Riddell and Garner maybe closer to being finished, and Sheila and that would have already been gone by then as well.
Yeah, Mia King's one that you definitely target with the big contract, because she's a really good player. And she wouldn't be on a big contract at North. And I don't know Mia at all, and she might be really happy staying for team success. But if I was a list manager elsewhere, I'd be asking the question, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much talent at North, even some players that aren't getting consistent games. And Ariana Heatherton, I'm not 100% if she was at Freo when you were there, but that's another one that, who moved across from Freo last year that's, got a consistent couple of games here and there, but they're the types as well. When Sheila let it go, they may get that opportunity. You could try and poach them before the Sheilas and that's retire, then they'll start getting games consistently.
Yeah, that's right. And then even like Ella Slocum, who I rate highly from WA, who she's playing well in their scrimmage and doing well, and I can see why she's not getting opportunities. She's really hard to get in that team, but she's someone who might be happy biding her time and coming in when you're Carnies and that do retire, but other clubs no doubt would be looking at someone like that because she's got genuine pace and line-breaking ability.
For sure, and the Irish women all in the competition as a whole, but even particularly the ones in North Melbourne, Blaine Bowe, who didn't play at all in her first year last year, and this year she's definitely all Australian worthy. This year almost won the Coleman and effectively her first AFLW proper season. Amy Gavin Mangan, who played maybe 4 games. Again, that's the type of player who she's done really well the 4 games she's played, but you're at North Melbourne, it's just a hard team for you to. And Vicky Wall, another one at North, is that dangerous trio of forwards for them is pretty handy and troublesome pairing for oppositions to match up on.
Yeah, and O'Shea's another one who I really like.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Unlucky not to be in all Australian contention as well. So they've done really well with their Irish players, and the hard part with Irish players is when you get them across and not playing them because they're a long way from home and it's a difficult situation. So. Clubs, for those ones who haven't been getting regular games, could be looking at, but they seem to have done really well in keeping them happy to come back again and play, as we've seen with Bogue this year.
For sure, and there's so many at other clubs. I mean, actually, Maloney's one that comes right to mind at Geelong straight away. There's a few at Freo as well. They're just, there's so many that are just doing so well in the competition as a whole. They're not just, making up numbers. Some of them are standing out completely. Dana Finn is the perfect example from Carlton, who I had as my most improved player this year. She's just been shot out of nowhere late last year and definitely this year. It's a massive standout.
Yeah, my favourite player to watch is Fitzpatrick, Aaron Fitzpatrick, who...
Oh, another one, yeah.
Yeah, I just love watching her play, the way she goes about it, and she's been a big part of Carlton's rise up the ladder. So, yes. They obviously offer a lot, the Irish players, if you can get the right ones, and I know it was... good part of my job going over to Ireland and recruiting a couple, clubs that are doing it are definitely getting the benefits.
Sure, and you talk about stars, and last time we spoke about Ella Robertson being one of the best young players in the comp. I've said it for a while, she is the best young player in the comp and is quite arguably in that conversation, I feel, in the top 3 for the best players in the competition as a whole. The rise from her we spoke about when she was at Peel Thunder and everything like that before she was drafted and stood out then. Last year she was really, really good, and this year just stepped up even more if that's even possible. How far do you think Ella can go, and do you think she can be the best player in the competition soon?
Yeah, no, I think she definitely can, and it's a good problem to have, but it's also an interesting one for Daisy Pearce of where to use her because, with Riddell, you just put her in the middle and you don't even think about it, but with Ella... because West Coast struggle a bit up forward, you'd love to have her up forward, but she's so damaging in the mid, and their mid don't have a lot of depth through there at the moment, so you've got to keep swapping her around. But I'm sure if I was at West Coast, you'd be really loving what Painter's done this year, and you could almost see in time that those two could just almost call their own changes between midfield and forward. So you've always got that presence through there as Painter builds her tank, because that's obviously an area that she'll continue to grow in. And it's exciting for West Coast that they're going to have that 1-2 punch for quite a while. And as they get more experience, I think they can almost call their own changes through there.
For sure, yeah. Painter was another one of the leadership, and as I said, as a co-winner of my Rising Star prediction, but this year. But the leadership that she's shown, I went to 4 or 5 West Coast games, all in Victoria. All in Victoria. And Painter, the first game, I think it was her second game, she was leading the West Coast forward line in the game against Saints. In their comeback, they had that comeback win. And the leadership she's shown for a first-year player, and she's had all that. But you go to an AFLW club at that age, and then lead the forward line, I see, pointing, telling people where to go and everything like that. That must be full work to what she's put in, and West Coast, obviously, to be a leader at that age. Yeah,
definitely. And because of that age demographic at West Coast, you've got Emma Swanson, obviously she's been a great leader for a long time, but there's just not that depth of leadership. And they've got 2 very young captains in Charlie Thomas and Bella Lewis. So it's really important that those younger ones do take on responsibility, and they probably feel like they can, because they're not intimidated by a senior group at all. So they know the younger ones that they know they have to step up. I think that'll really help them in the long term, as these players are almost fast track their leadership development just through necessity.
For sure. In terms of West Coast and your old mob Freo, how have you assessed their seasons? Obviously, West Coast making their debut finals appearance, obviously not the great result against Carlton, but how do you overall assess both clubs' seasons?
Yeah, West Coast really exciting. I thought their game when they beat Geelong was their most complete performance I'd seen them play. I thought they showed a real ruthless edge that maybe they haven't shown in the past. And that was at a time where if they'd have lost that game, they could have missed, they definitely would have missed finals. And I thought that them standing up in that game was a really positive sign for them. There's still concern is I think they only beat one team who finished above 13th this year. So that's what they now need to do to go to the next level. They can't be happy with this season as far as they can be happy with the improvement, but they have to raise the bar and go again. I really liked Ella Roberts' reaction when they lost the Derby. She was really filthy on the result. And I think they really need a little bit more of that through their team to not accept sort of any mediocre performances. And that wasn't a mediocre performance. They had a good crack that day. They just didn't quite get it done. But I loved Ella's response to that. And hopefully that can sort of start to go through the full team where, okay, they're now a final side. But they shouldn't be happy with that. Let's actually work on making a really big impact. And they're going to have a harder run in the draw next year. Which I think will be really good for them, even if they don't actually rise up the ladder anymore, but just to play more of those good teams more often to really test themselves. Freo this year had a really tough draw. But they probably had a better season this year than last year. Last year they had a really soft draw, made the finals, had beat Essendon, who were sort of beaten up at that stage. And because of that, they then paid the price with their draw this year. They had a really tough draw, but they had some really good wins against
Melbourne
better opposition than what West Coast did. So there's positive signs there. The concern with that list is it is ageing. It's one of the oldest lists in the competition. They haven't had too many talented youngsters come through the draft recently. Georgie Brisbane looks like a good prospect, but she still hasn't had a game where she's had more than 10 touches, and she's got some deficiencies below her knees at the moment. So that's something they've got to work on, and she's probably their most promising young player they've had for a few years. So that's going to be the challenge. I hope they do go to the draft this year and rejuvenate there to give some real life to those ageing players who are still performing well. I thought Kiara Bowers, her coming back this year, it wasn't a surprise to anyone that knows her, that what she was going to do. Hayley Miller had a really good year, and they've now got some good players through the midfield. Gabby Newton and Ash McCarthy. It's just the bottom end of their list looks really vulnerable, so they need to get that stronger. I think the way to do that is with some younger players.
Sure, I agree with that. Yeah, as you mentioned, the experienced ones. And Gabby Newton, who obviously was a former #1 pick of the Bulldogs, and then since she's come over, she's done really, really well. Indy Strom, I thought, the sister of Mim, obviously had a really good debut season, I thought, as well, being a key defender. It's not that easy just going in against the likes of Jessie Wardle. And I know in that practice match for a fact that she kept her goalless, and that's kind of rejuvenated her to play every game. And I thought she had some good jobs on Taylor Harris. I don't think she was goalless when they beat Melbourne in Perth at the end of the year. She's had another one that's probably done really well that kind of probably didn't have many major expectations. They've done pretty well.
No, she did. I'm happy to say that, she exceeded my expectations of her in her first year. But what she has got is that strong competitiveness. Mim is one of the hardest competitors you'll see, and you wouldn't get that from talking to her initially. And Indy's the same, just both lovely people. But obviously, when they cross that white line, they will do anything to win. And, it was really good to see what Indy produced this year.
For sure. The ruck battle for all Australian, Trent, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Is it Strom or is it Schultz? I've had debates with people I know they watch a lot of games as well, and it's really 50-50 split. I lean towards Mim because of the impact that she had with her one-on-one battles. Some people say Schultz. Where are you with that?
Well, why wouldn't you play two rucks, particularly with with the way that Schultz can play up forward? I'd be going that way because I thought they were both outstanding, and I thought if I could only play one player on the ball, I think it might just be Mim, but Schultz offers that forward option better than Mim does at this stage. So, yeah, you need to find a second ruck somewhere. I'd be having Schultz, whether it's I'd be Mim leading the ruck and Schultz, whether it's down forward or on the interchange to give out that chop out and also impact up forward.
For sure. Now, with Tassie coming in, Trent, obviously that's obviously in a few years' time in the AFLW continue as long as with the men's. How would you go about if you were a senior coach right now in terms of the list builds and everything like that for the next few years, considering there's going to be a compromise draft, I'm sure, in a few years like it will for the men's, for the women's one as well?
Sorry, if I was Tasmania or a different team?
Or if you're another club going to see Tasmania coming in.
That's why I'd be attacking the draft really hard now before they do come in, because and be attacking the draft now if I could.
Sure. If you don't mind repeating that, I actually cut out then. So what was the answer you gave?
Yeah.
No, you're right.
So, with Tasmania coming in a couple of years' time, and they're obviously going to get a really good draft hand, I think clubs really have to attack the draft now. Unless they think they can win a premiership in the next year or two, if they don't attack the draft hard now, they're going to get caught out in that year. And Tasmania could get a couple of years of draft sort of compensation or advantages. So I think now I'd be going as hard at the draft as I could now.
Sure. You mentioned about some sides that were competing at the top, and you mentioned Hawthorn, which I find it a little bit interesting because I thought like they played really well in the home and away season. You talked about the draw. I think they got a pretty cruisy one compared to maybe some others, and they've now that's consecutive years going out in straight sets. They obviously got some good players in their side, but I've noticed when they miss a few, they become a bit more vulnerable, and sides like Carlton have kind of leapfrogged them and on the weekend proved that. Where do you see Hawthorn at? Do they need to do something different? Is it just pure unlucky with injuries at the end? Do they need to change something completely? I think they need to change something. What do you think they need to do to get better?
I haven't thought about it, but sometimes it's not linear improvement, and I think Hawthorn's list build has been really good. They've got a lot of good young players, and they've got, I think, an athletic team. Overall, I think they were disappointing this year, and probably the soft draw for them didn't help them because it meant they weren't prepared for the tougher games at the end of the year. So they also had some injury problems at bad times, and I think their list at the moment is a little bit thin, which isn't surprising because they were in that last. They're the last lot of expansion or close to.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so they've actually sort of exceeded expectations early, but they're still building their depth. So I don't think it'd be panic stations. If you're at Hawthorn, you'd be hoping you're going to get natural improvement out of Fleming and those other young players they've got. So, I don't think it'd be panic stations, but I actually like Daniel Webster's words. He was filthy on the group for the way they sort of petered out, and I think that can really drive them this pre-season. So they won't go into this pre-season happy with where they're at or knowing, it's just going to happen. It's really going to take some hard work from that group, and they now know that it's going to do that. So, if I'm not too concerned about Hawthorn, I think they'll bounce back strongly next year.
Yeah, they've been talked about externally that there's a bit of a salary cap squeeze, and obviously someone's going to go out. Anya McDonald was one that was first talked about, then re-signed, but she's a massive signing for them. I feel like if they missed her, their full line would be more depleted than it would with her there. And she's a massive coup for them to say. But now Tilly Lucas-Rod might be the one to go. And it's shown kind of once Lucy Wales went out, that's when the downfall significantly dropped. And they were playing Early and Vukic and players that aren't number one rucks or not even rucks at all, and then hurting their other positions just to put someone there. And I feel like ruck depth is someone that they definitely should look at, even if it's someone alongside Lucy Wales that is a genuine ruck as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. McDonough is very important, and Lucas Rod is good a player as they've been. If you had to lose someone, I think they've got the young players coming through who can take those spots, whereas McDonough, I don't see that as being very easily replaceable at all.
Sure, absolutely. Now, going back to the draft, if you had to put your list management hat on, Trent, who will be this year's number one draft pick and kind of the top crop of, let's say 5 names?
So I suppose it's going to depend on what Gold Coast do with that pick one.
Yeah.
Because I'm presuming if you're Gold Coast, you're trying to trade out pick 1 to
Yes.
get a couple of picks later because you've got so many. And the way the rules are, you just have to match someone within 18 picks of 18 picks, I think. So I think they would love picks 19, 20, 21, 22. I reckon that would really suit Gold Coast. They'll be working towards that. So that first pick, I presume it might be Usher, and that Gold Coast would have to match with pick 19. I think Cowcher and Woomans would be right up there in that area. I was impressed with the Victorian Bones.
Chloe Bound.
Yeah, Chloe Bound. Yeah. I think she'll be right up there, and Davies is the other one who I think should be right up there. I thought that'd be my first 5. I have to qualify that, and I've been very much focused on the WA end of the talent and not the others. So, but from what I've seen, they would be my top 5. We'll see how we go on draft night.
For sure, absolutely. I mean, Chloe Bound, I've heard that Richmond are really into her, and that they're one of a few clubs that's trying to get Gold Coast's pick 1, I've heard recently as well. And I could see why, because Richmond probably need that midfield depth. And now, been a bit of interesting comments outside of Richmond where they obviously Grace Egan, they've told to look elsewhere. Hearing that, if you're like outside, would you be someone that looks at someone like Grace Egan who had a really good back end of the season, or how would you assess that? And do you think Richmond's made the right calls? They probably need to do something different. They had the same list as last year. They made a final series and did pretty well to get to where they did, and then they completely plummeted down, and something wasn't right, and I think something has to change, and that's part of the change.
Yeah, they've got the review going on there, and Brad Lloyd was part of the review at Carlton, which has obviously produced some really good things. So I think there will be some changes to that program. The Grace Egan one, it's always difficult when you're not within the 4 walls, but it did seem a bit strange. Not that she's might be moved on, but the way it's happened, because she would have had a lot of draft capital, I would have thought, trade capital, and now that's probably been lost now with the news that they've been told to look elsewhere. So that's an interesting one. On ability, I'd be looking for sure, and then just doing due diligence to see character, different things, training standards, all that. But she's someone that I'm pretty sure won't have trouble finding a home somewhere and can add to a list for sure.
For sure, Ned. The last one, Trent, so I really do appreciate you coming on. Obviously, the grand final's not this week. Obviously, it's next week. Obviously, so we've got 2 prelims, North and Melbourne and Brisbane Carlton. First off, how do you see those matchups going? And then who do you think plays in the granny and then wins from there?
Yeah, it's hard to go past North at this stage. And Melbourne, I thought Melbourne could challenge them. I thought both Melbourne and Brisbane could challenge North at different stages during the year, and they haven't really been able to. So it is pretty hard to tip against North sort of going all the way. The other game is really interesting. You just love what Carlton have done this year. I'll stick with Brisbane as my tip. I think that they can be really strong. And I think Carlton have had probably a fairly soft run through the finals. So I expect Brisbane to stand up, but I'm really looking forward to watching that. Like how good Sophie McKay to watch her play. And I love a bit of trash talk between the teams going into it. I think they're doing a really good job in promoting it. We're looking forward to that. But I'll lean Brisbane, and then return grand final, North and Brisbane, and pretty hard to tip against North at this stage.
Very true. Yeah, you mentioned Soph, and that shimmy thing she did with a fake shoulder injury on the weekend. I was actually right in front of her, because I filmed the match or do match day vlogs for it. That was right in front of me, so I was really happy she did that right in front of me on the camera. But with players like Soph, obviously when you were at Freo, Emma O'Driscoll's another name that comes up, maybe not that extreme in terms of celebrations and everything like that. But how do you let players like that go? Do you just let them go and do their thing to try and tone it down a little bit? How would you approach it if you were in that position, if Soph was, say, at Freo at that time?
Emma would be a bigger celebrator than Soph. She just doesn't kick goals.
Okay.
She definitely would be a big celebrator. Like we saw her with the flips that she was doing and for a while, and we love that. I think where W is at the moment as well, it's it's about promoting the game, and those girls do it. So I'd be all for them letting them go. We had to stop Emma doing her flips because she had an ankle injury. So we had to say, okay, not ideal after a semi-final to be doing them. So I had to stop her at that point. But it definitely wasn't anything about the reining anyone in. I think you'll go for like, I wouldn't like to see a celebration when you're 5 goals down. Because that tends to be more about the individual than the team. But if they're up and about, close game or in front, all for it.
True, absolutely. I mean, I like it too. Obviously within limitations, as you said, but generally it's pretty cool. And Trent's been a pleasure having you on. Good luck with this year's draft crop. And then, as you said, in a few weeks' time, you'll have next year's to worry about and everything in between that. It's a rinse and repeat, but obviously I'm sure it's a job you love doing. Is that something too, just quickly, you love to keep staying involved with?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's so rewarding working with young female athletes who want to improve, and you can see the improvement really quickly, and then being able to sit back and watch the rest of their career. It's a joy to do. So I love doing what I'm doing.
For sure, Trent's been a pleasure. And hopefully, there's more successful players, success stories of players getting drafted that, just like in previous years, and that list keeps rolling on and on. Trent's been a pleasure having you on. Good luck for this year's draft crop and future years. Appreciate you coming on.
No worries. Thanks, Cooper.
No, thank you.